All right, continuing on with making our finger jointed box, we need some sides to our box. Best way to do that is to build from known parts or known geometry. So I'm going to build around the origin. If I turn the origin on, you can see it's in there. We actually made a center rectangle around that. So it should be dead center. That's terrific. Um, so now I want to create a sketch right on this face here, and so that I can build the side exactly where it's going to be when we assemble the box. So there it is. I will right click on that face and I'll say create sketch. I'll zoom in a little or zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to use a 2-point rectangle. I'm going to tie into this geometry because it sees it, it snaps in. And if I mouse over that edge over there and pull up, it'll make a dotted line. That's great, but it sees it and it's aligned with it. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the height. I could type in like 100 if I wanted to, and it would make it 100 high, and that might not be a bad thing. But in this case, I don't actually want to type in the numbers. I'm going to use those parameters I created earlier. So here I'll type in height, and then I'll tab over and I'll type in width. And now those dimensions for the side are going to be parameterized. And so if I change those parameters, this sketch will change, which is exactly what I want to happen. I'll finish my sketch. There it is. And just to test that everything's working, I'm going to go to my parameters and I'm going to change them up. And I'm going to change the width of my box back to 100. And lo and behold, everything scales up, and that's exactly what I want to happen. So I need to make that side. Let's extrude it. I will invoke the extrude command. I'll click that part of it, but you'll notice as I zoom in that I've actually I've forgotten part of it, because that face bisected the sketch profile, and I need to select the whole thing. And then I'm going to pull it in. And I'm going to pull it in so that it overlaps with the bottom. And later you'll see that I'm going to actually use that to create my intersecting joints. But for the moment, I'm going to go minus thickness on my extrude. Come over to my dialog box over here for the extrude. I've got 2 profiles selected. That's correct. And it's now going in negative. It's set now to a cut. The red is telling me it's going to cut something. And in the operation, it confirms that. If I twirl down the objects to cut, you'll see that it's only going to cut the bottom. I actually don't want it to cut right now. I want it to make a new component. You'll notice that it's not red anymore. It's not going to cut anything, and it's going to make an overlapping part. Now, that is a no-no, but we're going to fix that later. You'll see how. So I'll say OK, and now I've got a sketch I need to name, and I'm going to call that side, and I'm going to call the component that I made from that sketch side as well, and now we have our side. Now at this point, we've got a problem. Like, it's not jointed, and this thing's overlapping, which is impossible. We could never actually put it together because these things overlap. In fact, to prove that, if I select these parts on the design surface and I go to the inspect menu, I can run an interference analysis, which will tell me if things are interfering with each other. So I say compute, and oh look, it shows me that in red there, that's overlapping. That's a no-no. Again, we're going to fix this in a moment. But to do that, we're going to have to make our finger joints. So I will now zoom in here, and I'm going to come to my side sketch. I'll turn the sketch on. I'm actually going to double-click it and start editing. In order to create my finger joints, what I want to do is put in some lines. I'm going to draw a line that is exactly lined up with the bottom edge there, or the top edge of the bottom, as it were. And I stretch that over, and it turns black. If I turn off my bottom visibility, you can see it's all black. That's good. Now what I need is a line to make the finger joints with. So I'm going to just snap in a line anywhere along here. As long as it goes in between these 2 lines there, that's great. But obviously, I don't want to cut my finger joints at an angle like that. So I need to make this line here go vertical, or to go perpendicular to everything else. There is a constraint for that. So if I come up here to my toolbar, I can click on the horizontal vertical constraint and then click on that line, and it'll go vertical straight away. Now I turn that off again. If I hit escape to get out of that constraint, I now have a line that is blue, but it's got that horizontal constraint or the vertical constraint applied to it, so it's always going to be straight up and down. That's good. I need to dimension this though, because it's movable. Like, I can click it. If I click that sketch entity, I can move that around. I can't move it up and down, but I can move it side to side. So as we know, when we want to constrain something in terms of movement, we hit the D key and we say where it is. And I'm going to say that it is 10 millimeters from that edge there. Now it turns black. Yay. I'm going to need more of these because we can't just have one finger to make a finger jointed box. I mean, this particular sketch profile is not going to be enough. So I'm going to make a pattern. Now, patterns are one of the superpowers of Fusion 360. In this case, it's going to ask me in my rectangular pattern dialog, what objects do I pattern? I'm going to pattern this one. And then it's going to ask me, well, what direction? Well, I'm going to say, I'm going to pull out here. And you'll notice that in the actual dialog box, it's as I pull that along, it's changing the values in here. Now, I'm going to make this distance, I'm going to make that width. And then I'm going to add a little arithmetic, and I'm going to say, I'm going to take away minus 20. And you'll see that, you know, it's moved it into the right place. And I said minus 20 because there's 10 over here, and I want another 10 to be on the other end over here. So I've said minus 20. But it will stretch out now because I used a parameter. No matter how wide this product ends up being, it will distribute this pattern evenly across that sketch. Now, I actually want more lines than that. I'm going to increase this, and I'm going to say I want to have, 10 of these things. Why not? And I'll just say OK. Now, in my sketch, I now have another icon, and it's this one. That is the rectangular pattern icon. If I double click it now, I can bring up the dialog for it, and I can change those settings anytime I want. I could remove some of the fingers. I could say, oh, I only want that many, or I could add more. It's really up to me. I'm going to set it back to 10 for now, and I'll say OK, and I'll get out of this sketch because it's fully constrained, and I'll start to make my fingers. So to do this, again, always extrude, and it wants to know what sketch profiles to extrude, so I will start to select them. And you can see what I'm doing here. So I'm going to now pull in those sketches. I'm going to cut those sketch profiles right out of that material. But to do that, I don't need to cut that far. That's too far. So I'm going to set the extent of my extrude to object, and I'm going to click on the back side of the side wall. And there it's going to go all the way through there. And because I selected to object, no matter how thick the side is, it will always cut right through it. Now, if I turn on my bottom, I'm going to show you this because it's going to sort of expose a bit of an error here. I do want to cut those out, but I don't want to cut the bottom. And if I expose the objects to cut, it's going to say there's the bottom and there's the side. I'm going to untick the bottom. I do not want to cut out those fingers of the bottom. And you'll see that what I want them to do is interlock, so I don't want to have them exactly line up. So I untick bottom, and I say OK. And now, oh, it's done nothing, right? Wrong. If I turn off my sketch here and turn off the bottom visibility, you'll see it actually cut those out. Conversely, if I turn on the bottom visibility and I turn on the side and turn off the side, it didn't cut anything on the bottom, and that's exactly what I wanted to happen. So how am I going to get this thing to interact though with the with the bottom? How am I going to joint the side and the bottom together? Because they're overlapping, and that's a problem. Well, I'm going to use the side as a tool, and I will cut that from the bottom. To do that, I will invoke the combine command. So I hit combine, and the target body is what I want to cut from. So I'm going to click that, the bottom, and the tool body, that's my side. And then I'm going to say cut. And here's an important part. I will keep tools. If I don't tick keep tools, it's going to delete the side. I don't want that to happen. So everything's lined up. I'm going to cut out of the bottom. That's the target. And the tool is the side. And then I'm going to keep my tools. And I say OK. And if I turn off the visibility of the side, you can see now that it has created the cuts that I want. That joint will now line up. And if I run the interference analysis again, I select both parts. And I will now inspect for interference, click compute. No interferences detected. Music to my ears. All right, well, that's it for this tutorial. We'll move on to creating the rest of the box in our next video.